Do 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 funk fancy do 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 the bowl do 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 Stratoceros do 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 it's the War of Nerds. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Yes, it's still the same intro for now. I'm not gonna lie, probably for a few months, but we'll get you something funkier. Anyways, welcome to episode number 2. We are proud and happy to have you here. I'm your host, Nathan Helm.
Alfred Muller, one of the other hosts.
And I'm Ryan, also known as Stratoceros.
So today, pretty exciting topic, I think, is video games. All about video games. Long stretch of a lot of stuff. And we're going to start with a very simple question and go around the world here. What makes video games awesome to you? Go ahead, one of y'all.
I'll jump in right away. For me, it's the escape. Anytime I'm stressed, anytime I'm looking for an escape, just like books, video games has always been there. It's your chance to go into another world visually with the story and to do things you've never been able to do. For me, that's the draw. And it has always been there to escape what's going on and find a new world to delve into.
Yeah, that's similar for me. Also, it's an instant gratification. So like we're all authors, so writing could take months or years. So when you hop on a video game, you can knock something out or a couple of quests in a couple of hours span, and you just feel like, all right, I did something. And that for me is kind of like a nice relaxing escape.
100%. Yeah, I mean, not too much more to add on about that, but strictly for me is it brings back some of my fondest childhood memories from growing up. I mean, I remember being in the hospital when I was really young with pneumonia, and back in those days, each hospital room had a GameCube or a Nintendo or some sort of game console like that. And you had Mario Kart, The Legend of Zelda, Super Smash Brothers, um, Castlevania, Sonic the Hedgehog. I mean, the list goes on. And I remember being a kid playing those games, and it was the coolest thing in the world. All these different, unique characters, all these crazy powers you could do, unlocking hidden treasures, stomping on giant mushroom heads with Mario or Luigi, and it was just man, it was a lot of fun. So for me, just the experience itself is what made and makes video games so special for me.
I've got a lot of good memories of video games too. Not just that like I played, but like I would watch my dad play on computer games, and my cousin showed me Super Mario when I was younger. My other cousin and I spent hours just hanging out, and I think that's the beauty of video games. Maybe more so when they first came out, like the parties, everybody would come over and you'd hook up all the Xboxes or PlayStations and you'd play in the same room. But even now, in the more virtual way, it's still like you get together with a group of friends and just go out and do something, even if it is a video game. The communication and camaraderie you could build through it.
I 100% agree. And I think you guys both hit some great topics there. The nostalgia is fantastic. And then playing games or watching your father play games, I think it's an intergenerational thing for video games. You see parents with their kids playing the same game. Minecraft's a huge example of that. I know in my family, on my stepbrother's side, their dad and them played World of Warcraft together. They had a guild, and that guild had family members, and then it had extended family. And even some of those multiplayer games, you built a family with the people you played online with. So it's almost a communication too. The more you get outside of the single player games and the LAN parties and all that stuff as well.
Yeah.
Uh, I could never forget. My dad had an Atari, and I had a Sega Genesis, and then of course I had this big, thick, old Windows PC, big, thick box computer, and just a bunch of awesome games like Jumping Bean, Red Alert, um, little like creation, like make your own food type games where you would go in and like do different creations of stuff. I'd be at my cousin's place in West Des Moines, Iowa, and we'd play Red Alert. Or one of my fondest memories was playing Flight Simulator with my dad with the joystick and launching those planes into the air, shooting at the old World War I B bombers. And oh man, that was such a cool experience, man. Like, my sister would play Jumping Bean with me. Um, we just had a love of. It wasn't necessarily that. Sometimes parents, they're a little bit against video games because they, for whatever reasons, whether it be religious or they think the games are too violent. But even with that, there are games they'll allow their children to play, and they'll play with them because it's the experience of doing something together, something that you'll remember, something exciting. Whether board games too was a lot of fun for us. Um, Anything from Monopoly to Sorry to tic-tac-toe. I mean, it didn't really matter. Um, so games in general, they're they're there's a bonding experience when you play them with others. And it's something that you won't forget. I don't think any of us will forget when we were 8, 9, 10 years old, sitting around Christmas time, Thanksgiving, playing cards or playing Monopoly or playing Super Smash Mario Brothers or whatever it might have been.
Yeah.
And we'll remember those until the day we die. So
Absolutely.
now, when it comes to video games, we all have ones that we like and we all have ones that we don't like. So we'll go around the world and we'll talk about maybe what our favorite one is, maybe what one of the ones that we don't like as much, or perhaps one we used to love that now we might have its complicated relationship with. So I'll get us started on this one. Um, my least favorite video game is none. I don't have a least favorite video game because every game is unique in its own sense, and I like to try just about everything. Um, you go on Xbox Game Pass and you can find some really wonky styled games. Whether it's Minecraft or there's this game on Xbox where you can go around and you can like your body like bends and flexes and stuff and like goops around. You can just toss people off of buildings and their entire like body will just stretch down and then come back up, and it's really crazy. It was an indie game actually. It was a brilliant experience. But the goal is to go around and build stuff similar to Minecraft, except you can just like grab onto people's like legs and pull them, and like you're like stick figures almost. It's pretty trippy. Um, so I really don't have a least favorite video game because I think the spectrum of games is so vast and open. You try one, if you maybe don't like it, you kind of forget about it, honestly. It's only
So,
video games that impact me that I remember, you know?
not to cut you off, but do you have a least favorite like style of video game?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. So, a least favorite style of video game, I can't say really that I do. I just like all games really because everything has its own unique thing to offer, whether it's a first person shooter, whether it's an RPG, whether it's sports, whether it's military, or um I just really can't think if I have a least favorite style of game. The ones I probably play the least would be like Minecraft, just because like those building type games aren't really my style. I know it hurts some people, and but remember, there's always a pecking order to games. Ha ha ha
It's
ha.
okay, because my least favorite style, when we get to it, will probably cross one of your favorite franchises. So we'll get to that when we get to it.
Oh, will we? I look forward to it, young master. Um, but my favorite video game of all time is Halo. And back in the days of Bungie, this Halo was legendary in itself. It was the pinnacle peak of science fiction video games, just video games in general, period. Now, I don't classify Halo in the same ballpark that I classify Mario, Sonic. Those games are you that's like putting Luffy, Naruto, and Goku in a fighting ring and being like, which character is better? No, you don't do that. They're both amazing. But video games when it comes to like hard consoles like PlayStation, Xbox, PC, that's definitely Halo. And gosh, you could go on and on about the greatness of the original Halo games, starting with Combat Evolved. I mean, the Spartan program, Dr. Halsey, John, Master Chief. I mean, he's the coolest video game character ever created. I mean, this beefy, bulky Spartan who was created literally as a war machine to fight off aliens. The races that Halo has, like the Covenant and the Flood, and the names for their ships. Halo's naming convention is sicker than most books and movies. I mean, it's beyond brilliant. And so I could go on and on about Halo, but that's my favorite video game. And it also ties into one that used to be my favorite and now has a complicated relationship with, because 343 Studios should be ashamed of what they did with Halo for Halo 5 and Halo 6. It had the potential to be legendary, and they just dropped the ball with a lot of multiplayer opportunities. The campaign itself was just kind of bleak, in my opinion, just starting off in the beginning, and it wasn't long enough either. Most Halo campaigns are ridiculously long, especially in the first three, and just the poor choices. It really started kind of going downhill with Halo 4, but I still enjoyed it. But once they switched creative teams, my love for Halo will never go away, but my enjoyment and my want to play it now has kind of just dropped down, and I find myself going back to the old school games of Mario and Super Smash Brothers and Legend of Zelda, which has been stepping its game up of late. So that's me. Whoever would like to go next, knock yourself out.
I'll go next. So to play off of your topic with the Halo, my least favorite style of game, and this is purely on my own skill level, is shooter games, because I am the world's worst player when it comes to shooter games. But Halo is one of the two exceptions for that. I grew up playing Halo 1 and Halo 2. We used to go to the local cinema and they would put it up on the big screen, and like they'd have tournaments there. Loved it. But I was terrible. I never won, never did very well, but nothing better than pistol whipping people from behind and getting the one-shot kill there on some of those. Yeah. And then there was a game called Time Splitters that just was very campy. It had random characters. Yeah, just a classic PlayStation 2 game. And it had Time Splitters 1 and Time Splitters 2. So those are like the two shooting games that I could get into. But all the rest, I'm so terrible at them that it's not fun to just die over and over again for me. But for me personally, like the games I love to play, I don't have a whole lot of time anymore. So when I do play, I can't play like a game that requires 40 minutes straight of not leaving your computer, or you get timed out of the game and you're playing with other people. So I used to play League of Legends. I used to play World of Warcraft, but I can't commit that time anymore. So
Sure.
Tactical games kind of took over for me. There's a series kind of like Final Fantasy Tactics. It has 7 games out now, and it's probably not very well known, but it's called Disgaea. And it's a Japanese game company, NIS. They put it out, and it's very anime-ish. So it's like Final Fantasy Tactics meets anime, with all sorts of monsters and playable characters like warriors, mages, healers, stuff like that. And you move across the tactical board. You power up your characters very anime style, like to level 9,999,999, and all your abilities do billions of damage. And it's an awesome game, but it requires no like time structure. You can be in the middle of what you're doing, walk away, come back 4 hours later, and you're exactly where you were, because it's all single player, time based type situations. So other than leaving the game on or saving where you're at, it doesn't have that commitment. So that's really been one of my absolute favorite games lately. And like I said, they have 7 of them out. So it's kept going, and it has a fan base, but it's not one of the more popular ones or well known. But then go ahead.
I was gonna say, have you played Heroes of Might and Magic at all?
Oh, I love that one as well. And that's the same thing. Like if you're not playing that multiplayer, like that's a good one to like you can take your turn, you can let it play through the other NPCs or computer turns, and you can come back, do whatever you got to do. So I do like that one as well. And I think they have what, 6 of those out now?
I think
I
they've
started
got
with like,
7 or 8 at this
oh,
point. Yeah,
wow. I think
yeah,
I've played from 4 or 5 onwards, maybe 5. I think it was Heroes of Might and
yeah.
Magic 5 forward.
That's where I
But yeah,
played.
that's
Y'all
another
trip my
good one.
y'all trip my brain too. Sorry to interrupt, but
No, go ahead.
honorable mentions for me is Assassin's Creed, and it's it's a tough toss up with Halo. And then this is an older school game from PlayStation. I don't know if either one of you might remember, but Sly Cooper. And it
Yep.
was such a fun game. It's a lot like Assassin's Creed, but much more targeted toward kids. You go around with this little raccoon bandit, or is it a raccoon or a fox? I could never tell. It was raccoon.
Yeah, I think there's a
I think
actually
it's
I could
raccoon.
this might be one of those Mandela effects where it could have been either a raccoon or a fox. Or there was
Honestly,
a
I don't.
similar game at the same time.
Yeah, I like thinking of like Spyro or something or Star Fox. Um,
Yeah.
but anyways, I had to throw those in. But Alfred,
Raccoon.
raccoon. Okay, yep. Thank you.
Thank
Anyways,
Google.
please.
Were you
Thank
doing
you.
any? Did you have anything else to say, Ryan?
I was just gonna say Pokemon. Um,
Mhm.
Hardcore from the very beginning. Well, I shouldn't say hardcore because I was red and blue purist for a long time and said it was only 151 Pokemon, never would go past that. And then I don't know, 8, 9 years later, I gave in and have played every game that's come out since until their most recent ones, which I played. But we won't talk about how they're slowly killing their own franchise. But when
I
you keep throwing money as a
Yeah.
fan, they're going to keep making what they're making. So,
The highest I've gone is Gen 3, so like Ruby and Sapphire and Emerald is as
mm,
far as I've gone. Uh, but that's actually, you just reminded me about that. So my main go-to is sports games, just because similar to you, Ryan, I could hop on, play a game or two, and be done. There's no real stakes involved. I mean, if I lose a game, I lose a game. I could just sim through the rest and exit out if I have other things I have to do. And I mean, I've always played sports games. I don't know why. I've just always been drawn to them, and it's an easy, like I was talking at the beginning of the show, it's just an easy gratification for me. I'll destroy another team and be like, all right, I did great. Now I can stop and go do whatever. But Pokemon is a close second for me. I remember the first Christmas I got the Pikachu Pokemon Game Boy Color and Red and Yellow, and I played those until the games busted. But similar to you, I'm not a huge fan of first person shooters, mainly because I don't do well. I love watching other players play, and my cousin and I, that was the first thing we did. Whenever I'd sleep over his house, he'd throw on Halo, and I'd watch him play the campaign because it was a super interesting story. Like you could just sit there and watch someone play through it and be entertained as if you were playing it. But my skill set is just very lacking in that. Time Splitters was my favorite, and still is my favorite first person shooter. Uh, and then the Call of Duty, I was never good at, but I did play that for a little while. I'm not a huge fan of the multiplayer online games, just because they're so varying in skill set, and I'm never really that good. And like you said, it's not fun to die over and over again, but I understand the draw to them. Uh, I'd say the game that I go back to with nostalgia is Assassin's Creed, mainly because 1 and 2 were my favorite. After that, I feel like they kind of started heading downhill, and I wish they had just stuck to the original plan. But like you said, you throw money at something, and it'll just continue to make uh, edition after edition. But for me, with Odyssey and Valhalla, they're just RPG games now. They're not really assassin games. Uh,
No,
but I think, yeah. So that's
the
mine.
Ezio collection.
Yeah, that's the
I
best,
don't
I
know.
think.
The Ezio collection is by far the best of Assassin's Creed. That's old school Assassin's Creed.
Mhm.
Um, and I think some of us forget and sometimes sleep on the games that we played as kids that we just don't think about them as much anymore because of how, like you said, throw money, it's going to continue. But the old school Star Wars games were legendary.
Yeah.
The Force Unleashed, Star Wars Jedi Academy, Kodar, Knights of the Old Republic.
Mhm.
Um, okay, I'm a sucker for anything Star Wars, so I did get the new Star Wars Battlefronts, but the second one that's actually pretty good. The campaign with Iden Versio was a lot of fun. Um, I'm I'm anti microtransaction. I think it's just a scam to get money from your players and your community. So the Star Wars community got really salty, and they're just like, quit this microtransaction bullcrap, and they did. And then after that, the game started doing a lot better, and they started adding in all this cool stuff for the fans. They're like, okay, look, we're going to leave microtransactions here as an option if you want them, but they're not a requirement for leveling up or whatever else you're going to do. They offered more game modes, Galactic Conquest, Starfighter Assault, Heroes versus Villains. Again, my only complaint, like it is with most video games, whether it's Call of Duty, Halo, or anything, is the campaign was too short. It was much too short for the first Star Wars game with a campaign in God knows how long. Star Wars: The Force Unleashed was really the last one.
I feel like a
Well,
lot of game designers have moved away from campaign into the mass multiplayer online because that's where they get the most traction. Which I get the draw again, but I'm with you. I prefer campaigns because you actually get involved in the video game. You're not just hopping on for like a Destiny to or how Halo became at the end, where it's just all right. Don't care about the campaign. Let me just jump online and kill some people with my friends.
well, why do you think lit RPG book genre is so popular? Because MMORPG games are some of the most popular things right now in video games, and it bothers me to admit that because I'm not a multiplayer type dude. I don't like going online to be around a bunch of trolls who are going to camp and just kill you over and over again, showing no skill whatsoever. Real skill, real heroism is getting your butt kicked over and over again, but learning how to play the freaking game and enjoying the experience. Getting out there and playing it as if you were actually like I take some of my military experience when I'm playing like Call of Duty and stuff, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna be tactical about this. I'm gonna sneak out a little bit, look left, look right, look up, look down, all clear. Oh, just kidding, I got sniped in the head. Oh well, good thing this is a video game.
I forget the name of it. There's like a military realistic first person shooter game. I don't remember the name of it, but you have to have like five or six other players with you, and you go through, and it's designed to be uh, literal military strategy. I just don't remember the name of it. My brother-in-law talks about it a lot, and he was like, it's hard as hell, but it's fun.
Shoot, yeah, I don't know.
I'll have to let him know, and I'll let you know off screen and whatnot. But that game, he says, is the closest he's come to like military virtual reality almost.
Yeah. Well, for anybody who's listening to the podcast today, we'll take a quick 2-second break here to thank our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by nothing because we don't have sponsors. So I'm just kidding. But if any of y'all do have any content that you want us to do or any topics when it comes to entertainment type stuff, books, movies, TV show, video games, writing, narrating, the world of anything entertainment, please feel free to reach out to us. We're very close to having an email put together as well as a YouTube channel up and
We
running.
have the
So
email up, so
the email is up. So go to just email warofnerds@gmail.com or warofnerdspodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's warofnerdspodcast@gmail.com. Email us with any questions, comments, just to say hi. If you have any ideas for future episodes, please, we welcome it. I mean, this is a new thing for all of us. We're really just here to have fun and to engage with y'all. So
And we'll put the link in the on the YouTube channel where we can put the email, so you guys could go there and just click on that also.
yeah, and we'll put the link tree up as well, where we'll have links to all of our personal stuff, our TikToks, our books, our everything. So if you want to interact with us, we'll also put a Discord page together So if you guys want to be part of the community for the War of Nerds podcast, you'll be welcome to join. We're just three regular dudes. We're not some elitists who are going to be like, no, we refuse to talk to you. Our names are not actually what they are. We are, no. No, we're just regular people, and we would be thrilled to hang out with you in a Discord and talk nerd and video games, and heck, maybe even get some D&D games going. You never know. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities. So
That'll definitely be a podcast topic, D&D.
oh
Absolutely.
yes, it will. And
Edition 1 through 5.
Mm-hmm.
who knows? Maybe we'll end up like R.A. Salvatore. We'll create our own D&D session with some of our awesome listeners, and it'll end up becoming three of us. Who knows? Possibilities are endless.
Ryan, I wanted to ask you about the strategy games. I know you said that Disca is one of your favorites and you played Heroes of Might and Magic, but are there any others that you remember playing that you really enjoyed?
Oh, let's see. Heroes of Might and Magic was really good. This guy was good. Final Fantasy Tactics in its own right was good. Outside of those, I know I'm missing some because there were definitely more I played. Age of Empires, Civilizations, like those in general have always been fantastic in my mind. Just it almost goes with our writing stuff, creating a whole culture that you bring from the beginning of time to its peak, and then going through war or avoiding war or diplomacy, depending how you want to play it, things like that. The Age of Empires, Age of Mythology series, because as much as I love history, I love mythology, and the Age of Mythology series was fantastic because you got to throw in a little bit of that mythology with your tactical raising of troops and conquering land and stuff like that. So a lot of those kind of go in that tactical strategy game area. Any for you guys?
Red Alert would be the one that comes to my mind. That's an old school, very, very, very old school, back early 2000s, if not earlier. And started off as a PC game, and I would play that with my cousins and whatever. You're going around, you're creating these settlements and these everything. I think another one would be Oregon Trail. It's not quite as close in nature, but it's similar as a strategy game. You have to figure out how to survive. You learn a bit about history. It's obviously not as realistic as actual history, but you do learn about the Oregon Trail, which is a lot of fun for any history buffs out there. And you hope that you don't die from getting run over by a horse or some other
dysentery.
BS disease. Exactly. Unfortunately, your wife has died due to a disease, and now your children are sick. You are allowed to your last horse and your last, section of food. What will you do? You have 700 miles to go before any livable city is like, you're like, crap. And you go for one more day, and you're like, unfortunately, you have all died. End of Oregon Trail. Like, no!
I'd say that I don't know if you guys ever played it. I noticed that it's like very small in the Command and Conquer world, but Tiberian Sun was probably my favorite. It was building a base just like other Command and Conquer games, but you gathered up Tiberian, and it was more focused about the resource Tiberian than it was the war. But one of my favorite was like skirmishes, and you'd have 2 to 8 bases around, and I remember I would create a whole bunch of infantrymen and just send them out, and then they would get stars as they completed missions and whatnot. So I took him. I was like, all right, I built a story around this guy. He was a private who worked all the way up to general, so he's going to stay in the base, and I'm not going to let him risk losing him or whatnot. But little things like that, where the strategy games you build ideas around the characters, and just to add a little bit more to it. But Masters of Orion was a space version of that. I was never good at that one. I still love playing it. And trying to think of any other strategy games. Those were my 2 big ones growing up. Anything in the Red Alert, Command and Conquer universe was a go-to.
If most people, when they talk about strategy games from back in the day, is Red Alert. I mean, that's the most heavily talked about one because it was it was just so awesome. Like that was our first real introduction to any type of strategy PC game. And I would have been okay if it would have been on Xbox or PlayStation. And that brings me to our last question because I think we're getting close to that 40-minute time limit for the episode. But really quick to wrap things up with our last question: favorite consoles, and you can do your top three favorite, rank them in order. And I know it's a tough one, and I kind of threw it to you guys on the spot, but I'll go first so you guys have an inkling more of a second to think about it. So, favorite consoles in order for me, that would be the original Nintendo 64. After that would be the GameCube, and after that would be the Xbox.
For me,
Uh,
since you brought it up, N64, I have so many memories with that. So that's got to be my number one. PlayStation 2 for the nostalgia also. That was the first system that I really had, other than like friend systems that I would go and play. And then third would be Xbox One, just because it's the one I use the most now.
Fair.
For me, I'm a PC guy 100% through like most of the games, especially some of the older games you can now get on Steam with PC. So I get to replay some of those on my computer. Probably number two would be my Switch because that's where I play nowadays most of my Pokemon games and things like that. Disguise is also on there. And then just because we're all kind of in unison this one, I never owned an N64, but I always was at my friends' houses playing GoldenEye, Mario Kart, just having
Yeah,
fun on that. And it was the console you gathered around to play together.
Yeah,
it was. N64, the original PlayStation, and GameCube were probably the three most gathered around game systems in our time era. And growing up
Mhm.
in the 90s, in the early 2000s, even the late 80s, you know, the first game system ever, if I'm, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Atari was the first game system ever created.
I
And a
believe
lot of
so.
our parents, you go back to the movie Jumanji and they had an Atari like in that movie, and you're like, oh,
Mhm.
that's cool, that's super cool. Um, and coming not too far after that was the Sega, and Sega Genesis. I had a Sega Genesis. That was my first game system. So I had Sonic the Hedgehog and Castlevania and some other crazy video games they had on that. Uh, and then we didn't even get into handheld video game systems like Game Boy Switch, Game Boy DS, Game Boy Advance.
Uh,
I had my dad's original Game Boy before the color, that I played
Oh,
for. Yeah,
that was the first one
dude,
we had.
you remember
we'll
going
have to
on like
do.
high school trips on charter buses and some like nerd kid 2 seats behind you would have a Game Boy, but some other like, you know, asshole like jock a couple seats over would be like, oh, I got the Game Boy Advance. Your nerd one is nowhere near as good as mine. And then you had some other guy who had like the most like top of the line like video game, but then the bus driver was just like, nah. He talks to the little nerd kid. He's like, you got the best one. Don't let anybody tell you differently. Um,
Yeah.
the little rectangle 2 button little directional pad, that was the coolest thing ever when it first came out.
We'll have to do
Um,
one on retro games too, because this is just
Oh
fun
yeah.
reminiscing. But we're
oh,
close to time.
okay. We're close to time. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been an excellent privilege and wonderful thing to have all you here. I, Zylock Grey, bless you all with long life and wonderful wishes. So, this has been the second episode of the War of Nerds podcast. We are your hosts, the Bearded Nerds. I'm Nathan Helm.
I'm Alfred Muller.
And I'm Ryan, also known as Stratosaurus.
And from wherever you are, have a fantastic night. We'll see you in the next one.
See you in the next one.